You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to our summary of the 2023 Ashes with me, Jack, Max, and Daniel Norcross on as a special guest. Before we get back to the cricket, we've got a special message from our partners, Manscaped, haven't we, Max?
Yes, we have. It's a new month, and that means new ads for you. And today we're here to sponsor with a sponsor for your bouncing bundle of joy. But no, we're not. We're not talking about a baby. We're talking about your baby makers. Because today's show is brought to you by Manscaped, as you all know, our dedicated listeners. And your babies are delicate, like actual babies, and they have sensitive skin like actual babies, so they deserve products that are skin safe and made with safe ingredients. And that's where Manscaped's Platinum Package will have you in the best of hands. So treat your beautiful boys to the world's finest toys at Manscaped and use the code CricketPod for 20% off and free shipping. It's
that code.
It's great stuff.
That code once again is CricketPod, and you get 20% off plus free shipping. They've sent us the package for our package, and we were happy. Thumbs up. Daniel, I can see you looking inquisitively.
Well,
trust me.
Sounds like
it's worth a purchase.
It sounds like a terrific idea. Yeah, I mean, I think I understood what it was about. And initially, of course, I was skeptical. I don't want anything really down there apart from vertically running water from a shower head. And maybe the odd rummage around with some soap occasionally. But now I see that there's more to down there than just that. That I've got the opportunity to make it a genuine feature, I suppose, as opposed to something that I've largely shied away from and embarrassed by.
Yeah, exactly.
Men need to talk about these things more. We've got to talk more about these things. We've got to get more like Ben Stokes. We've got to be able to discuss our feelings and, I think compliment each other's testicles more.
I heartily agree. Max, we've got a Composite 11, moment of the series and player of the series. I'm going to give you dealer's choice on this. Which one would you like to do first?
Why not? Let's start with the Composite 11 because the moments. That's a good big grand finish.
It's easy as well. The Composite 11. There's only about 2 uncertainties in it, aren't there?
I'd say it was easy, but this is the way it's going to work. We're going to go in a circle.
It's a snake draft time.
It's a snake draft, yeah. So you get to make one selection, then it passes on to the next person. If the player goes, then they're out. And no funny business. I don't want Marnus Labuschagne jammed in at number 11 because nobody set him earlier. Like, this needs to be a functioning test team, okay?
Yeah.
Max, and I want a little bit of balance here. I don't want 11 England players. Okay? They're the rules. Max, you get to start first, then we'll go to Daniel and I'll go third.
Right. Well, I don't think we can really do anything other than start with the man who is the most surprising and the most improved from any level that I can imagine or have ever witnessed in terms of what was expected and what we got out of him in this series. So I'm going to say Zach Crawley to start because it was phenomenal. It really was.
I couldn't agree more. I think, I mean, that's the easiest pick of the lot, isn't it? Possibly.
That's what happens when you go first.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got number 2, have I?
Yeah.
I'm actually torn, really, because if this is a functioning team that's going out there, Crawley's got to play with Duckett, really, because they play in this style that comes straight at the bowlers. I mean, I don't know if you picked up on Andy Zoltzman's incredible stat that in the second innings, Crawley and Duckett hit 15 consecutive balls for runs, so 15 dotless balls, and inside the first 10 overs of the innings. And in the entire history of Test cricket, there's only been 1 6-ball over in the first 10 overs of an innings that was hit for runs off every ball, which is remarkable, isn't it, actually, when you think about it? There's been dot balls in every other over in the first 10 overs of every other innings in Test match history. That game was the ICC versus the rest of the world. It was Flintoff bowling to, I think it was Ponting and Hayden from memory. But England managed 15, which was utterly ridiculous. So twice as many as have happened in the entire history of Test cricket back to back. But because of the rules set up by you, Jack, and because I've got to take my hat off to the man that so many people said he can't play in England, even though he's in unbelievably good form around the rest of the world. He's obviously a changed player from the man who first came to England. it has to be Usman Khawaja, who got into the top 30, was it, of balls faced in an Ashes series. A lot of what he did was spectacularly dull, but he managed to do it in a really beautiful style. I mean, has anybody played the forward defensive from under his eyes with quite the same grace, even if it was deeply depressing a lot of the time? So how the hell has he done that? That's just, whoa, great ball, pong. And I loved him. I loved him for everything he did. He also pulled up a really good catch at one point, and you get to keep the left hand right hand combination. But
and he got in a fight.
And he got in a fight. And Crawley will get out really early in that team, unfortunately. But if he has Duckett as his partner, then he's allowed to stay. He's allowed to go a little bit more slowly, and then he gets really good. But anyway, he won't. He'll have to be the one who has to thrash at everything, because Usman Khawaja will be 71 not out to close the first day.
Right, I get a choice between Moeen Ali and Marnus Labuschagne here, don't I?
And Ben Stokes. And Ben Stokes.
Oh, and Ben Stokes. And Ollie Pope, if I wanted to go completely rogue. I'm gonna spurn Marnus, because I don't think I could suffer Khawaja and Labuschagne in the same team again. Also, you've got to factor in Moeen Ali's wickets here. I had a look at the averages for batting. It's 32 v 25. I think the wickets, the fourth inning threat that Moeen Ali brings, and just the general attractiveness of Moeen Ali versus the ugliness of Marnus Labuschagne mean that, in my mind, it's a pretty simple decision. I'm going to go for Moeen, Max.
It's not going back to down.
No, it's not a snake. It just
we're going circle. Okay. All right. So I get number 4. Delightful. Well, you would think normally that it would be Steve Smith, wouldn't you? Just with how imperious he is, but it's not, is it? Because Joe Root was better. He was better. He kept doing reverse ramps, and Steve Smith ain't going to reverse ramp anyone as obnoxiously unorthodox as he is, and also Joe Root is really useful as a spinner. So we get to keep our 2 off spin attack with our number 3 and 4 batters, and we get the fun of Joe Root at number 4.
Yeah,
easy.
We're all going to agree with that. Number 5. It isn't as easy as it actually looks, but when we quiz the numbers, Brooke scored more runs than Travis Head. Travis Head played some match-winning or match-altering innings. He nearly won the Headingley Test for them, you might say, with that great knock that he had towards the back end when England didn't bowl awfully well at him with the bouncer strategy, but he managed to play it terrifically well. So it isn't a simple one, but Harry Brook played a match-winning innings, really, at Headingley, and had an impact. When he stayed in for any length of time, he had a great impact, and he also played the silliest shot of the entire Ashes, which was his forehand smash to extra cover that he played at Lords, having batted.
Played it twice.
Absolutely. Yeah, but the one he got out to. And it was, what was so beautiful about that shot was that while Stokes was there, he joined him the night before, suddenly Brook batted like a really quite sensible man. And the next morning, he batted quite sensibly while Stokes was there, which was not for very long at all. And then the moment Stokes disappeared, it was a bit like, a boy whose parents are in the house, and then they say, right, well, we're going out this evening. We'll just be next door. And so he decides to whack on the sound system and put it up to number 11 and get monumentally pissed and vomit on the carpet, thinking that his parents aren't going to notice. And that's sort of the shot that Harry Brook played, and I love him for it, because it was so dumbass and at the same time so audaciously silly.
There were no fielders where he was trying to hit it.
But he was trying to hit it into space. But there's no fielders there, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean space, as in the large, expansive void of misery. Yeah.
I like how you said you quizzed the numbers and saw that Brook had scored more runs than Travis Head. Does anyone know how many more runs?
Well, he had until Head's got some runs yesterday, so it's probably Head's just ahead of him now. But he had one more inning. So
no. Brook is 1 run ahead. So
1 run.
Yeah.
The math backs it up. 6 is another tricky one. Now, obviously, Ben Stokes is good and would make a good captain, but the late entry of Mitchell Marsh, the Bison, did liven up the series, I think, from an entertainment point of view. So curveball here. I'm going to go with Mitch Marsh as the number 6, and I'm going to reject the England captain.
Absolute pervert.
Well, you know, if Ben Stokes could bowl, maybe he'd make it in. But you know, you need the steamer, right?
He hit 155. He nearly won a Test match with the most ridiculous innings you've ever seen in your life. He played a really important role in the victory at Headingley. Mitch Marsh got 100, didn't he? Yeah, in a losing cause, wasn't it?
So whereas one all on that front.
But Ben Stokes played a match-winning innings, which Mitch Marsh never did. The moment Mitch Marsh got into the side, Australia bombed. They lost 2 and got thrashed in the other. So, he's like the reverse Chris Wokes. He's the reverse Chris Wokes.
It's very difficult for me to leave out someone nicknamed the Bison. If Stokes had a better nickname, maybe I'd think differently. But
does Stokes have a nickname, or is it just Stokesy?
It's Stokesy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Go on, Max. Who's your number 7?
Okay. Oh, I get to choose who has the gloves. And if you'd asked me 3 weeks ago, there's absolutely no way I would be saying Johnny Bairstow. But it's a funny. They say a week's a long time in politics. It's an even longer time in a game of cricket. So it's got to be Johnny Bairstow. I mean, he pulled out a couple of phenomenal catches in the last couple of tests. He's finally hit some runs that actually mattered, and I suppose you got to give him the Spirit of Cricket award as well. So in he goes,
and he carried a man off.
Yeah, I thought that was a tricky decision myself, but then Bairstow pulled away, didn't he, towards the back end? And I think Ben Jones tweeted, I don't know the truth of this, but he tweeted that Bairstow had a better catch percentage in the end than Carey. I think that's partly because Carey was so good that he could get. Yeah, Carey was so good he could actually get to balls that Bairstow couldn't, and got little fingertips on it immediately. That counts as a drop, whereas Bairstow very wisely let the ball go between himself and Joe Root, so he didn't drop it.
Yes.
Okay, number 8 is a piece of piss. It's the easiest selection of the lot, apart from Crawley, and it's obviously the Brummy Botham. 19 wickets at an average of 18. Comes into the last 3 games. He couldn't even get selected against Ireland, for God's sake. And he comes in and he completely turns the series on its head with his best mate, Woody. So, yes, obviously Chris Wokes, we don't need to elaborate. We'll talk about him more as we go on, I've no doubt.
I think another no-brainer here is Mitchell Starc at number 9. The best Australian bowler, I think, by a distance. Maybe second best to Wokes overall for the series. Probably second best to Wokes overall for the series. He was fantastic once he got going. A little bit wayward earlier on, but I really, really enjoyed watching him bowl. And I was kind of glad in a way. He is a great player, and he didn't have a great 2019. He was benched for Siddle, wasn't he? So I think on a personal level, it's good to see someone come back and prove the doubters wrong. Max, 10.
10. Well, I feel like 10 and 11 have got to be sewn up, haven't they? I mean, so at number 10, I'm going to put Woody in there because just for the pure fire he brought at Headingley and just changed the momentum of the series. Like with that one spell, he just suddenly put the fear of God into the Aussie batsman and started the act of turning things around. Obviously, he was a little bit down on pace by the end of the 5th test at the Oval with the 3 tests back to back, but he just gave something so different to England, and he'll give something so different to this composite 11, and that's why Mark Wood's in there.
He also became only the second man in Test history to score 16 off his first 3 balls, which he did when England were completely down and out against Australia at Headingley. 120 odd in arrears, having tossed away a really good position yet again. And he came in with Stokes and turned the series with bat, as well as he'd done yesterday with ball. So, yeah, you're right. Number 11 is an absolute no-brainer. I think everyone's got this guy down on the team sheet. With him in the side, Australia were an unstoppable force. He was there at the end in the first Test match at Edgbaston, albeit he shouldn't have been really if Stokes had taken that catch. But it's obviously Nathan Lyon who has to get in this side, because if he'd played all 5 Test matches, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And you might have asked me on the podcast, and I said, really, Do we really want to dissect a 4-0 loss? I'm not sure we do. So Nathan Lyon for me has to go in there. And because you've picked Mitchell Marsh, we now have 4 seamers and 3 off spinners. And but one of them is going to do
balanced
an
attack.
awful lot more work than the other 2. But, yeah.
Oh, if only we get Todd Murphy in somehow, and Stuart Broad on the bench.
Yeah,
Well,
carrying
retired.
the drinks.
You thought I was going to say
He's
Stuart Broad, did you?
Stuart Broad's retired, so he can't play.
Yeah,
he's not
exactly.
available for selection.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right, let's quickly round off then with player of the series. Max, did you have a nomination? I think it's pretty obvious, isn't it?
I mean, I can't possibly look past Chris Wokes just because of the return is ridiculous. Came in 1-2-0. I mean, there were obviously honourable mentions, with in the wickets column, but I think it's probably going to be between a few bowlers, wouldn't it? The player of the series, despite the ridiculous number of runs that. Well, there's such a ridiculous number of runs that have been scored in some of these crazy innings, but I feel like the bowlers take it for me. But
well, it was different batters every time, and no one got 2 centuries, did they? There were actually very few centuries. There were lots of 90s. Zach Crawley at the back end might have had a shout, but he scored his huge number of runs in the game. It was a draw.
Root was probably robbed of a couple by some scuttlers.
He was, yeah, that's absolutely true. But you can't pick someone who was robbed because you don't know if he would have got out the next ball, which is rather unfortunate for Root. But I'm sure he'll live without this accolade. But yeah, I think it's got to be Wokes, hasn't it? Also, don't forget how nervously and brilliantly he batted with Wokes and then with Wood when Wood came in, and they still needed 20. And that's when I was genuinely pacing up and down and couldn't watch because I thought if they blow this now, then it's just going to make the next 3
Then
weeks
Wood hit it for
pointless.
6 and we were all fine again.
I know, we were all fine again. I know, it's amazing, isn't it, how quickly one's emotions were dragged from one place to the other. But got to be Wokes. Man of the series when you play 3 test matches. A bit like Sam Curran. Didn't Sam Curran win Man of the Series against India for?
Yeah, I think he did.
Popping in every now and then.
yeah, he did. And then moment of the series, Daniel, you can start with this one.
Oh God, there are so many. I think I still might go with Root's reverse ramp off the first ball of a day when England were in awful trouble, because the moment that happened was the moment that you realised, oh God, they really do mean all this. On the first day, there were arguments for and against declaring is the things. A lot of people were up in arms about it. I wasn't really. I wouldn't have done it because the stats show that people are less likely to get out with 7 overs of the day to go than they are when they go out the next morning. But I suppose logical reasons, really, because you realise you've only got this amount of time to survive, and they're good enough to do that, and they leave balls. And so Khawaja and Warner weren't the best people to try and get out in those circumstances. But there was also a very good argument for declaring. So that wasn't really Baz ball. The rate at which they scored sort of was. Their bowling was sort of Baz ball because of how they were trying to get people out, and they managed to do it. But it was when they were not very much ahead with 2 down, and he decides he's going to take on the world's best bowler by reverse ramping the first ball of the day. And I thought, oh man, this is going to be a ride, isn't it? Well, there's just no way of knowing how this is going to turn out. And because it set that tone for me for the rest of the series, I think it's probably my moment. But, there are so many. There's Johnny Bairstow. There's you go next and tell me what yours is.
Go on, Max.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd sort of penned down Zach Crawley's 189, but I don't know if I'm allowed that as a moment because it took quite a long time. Yeah. So how strict are we being on the definition of a moment? Is that allowed, or shall I pick something else?
Well, if you want the 189th run was a moment.
That wasn't much of a moment.
It's like one of those who just keeps getting better and better.
We'll go with something else. Let's just say Stuart Broad swapping the bails and then taking the second time. I think he swapped the bails and then immediately took a wicket and set up the win on the last day and set up him taking a wicket with his last ball in Test cricket. It was it had the humour from the bail swap, the ridiculousness, and obviously the narrative as well. Like he'd already hit his last ball in Test cricket for 6 the day before. Everyone was willing it to happen, and there was no way it was going to happen. Surely there was no way that it was going to be that perfect a a bow on top of the little present that we had of this series, but it was. I said yesterday it was too on the nose. I think it is still too on the nose. The writers do need to be sacked. It was too obvious, but it still happened, and it was still a phenomenal moment.
Mine's a little bit more basic, to be honest, fellas. The fake haircut, I think, was my moment of the series. Front page news that Alex Carey had stolen a haircut, only for it to turn out that had been, I don't know if it had been entirely made up or someone had tricked Alistair Cook into saying it, or exactly what had happened. But the whole furore around it, how offensive some people found it that Alistair Cook might have mentioned a fake haircut. A marvelous narrative subplot to the whole thing. The kind of Greg of Succession to the Ashes 2023. the comic relief that we all needed to take a breath. That was mine.
I think that's a really, really good choice, because what it did was expose just how gentle this Australian team is. I don't think Australian teams of the past would have got so riled by this. And after the incident, which I'm very pleased to see that none of us have chosen, we all know the incident that we mean. Cameron Green, I think, found it very difficult to deal with the Lord's crowd. Alex Carey, when he got out at the Oval, because he was booed ever since after that, one of the nicest men in cricket. You know, he would rival Chris Wokes for utter loveliness. You could see him kind of running off because he just didn't want to be there, you know, in front of the boos as he walks off and getting out. And actually, Pat Cummins' captaincy kind of degenerated after the incident, but the haircut was sort of symptomatic of that fragility that they had, that it didn't take a lot. When you go to Australia, and I did the Ashes in 2017-18, for example, the stories about England were just horrible. They were about, you know, Johnny Bairstow headbutting Cameron Bancroft, which he didn't do. He nuzzled heads with Cameron Bancroft. It was clearly a stitch-up to try to make him look like a thug. And the story of Ben Duckett throwing the water over Jimmy Anderson, that came from Australia, it didn't come from England. Typical, you know, just like ratting him out. And then linking that to Ben Stokes' issues that he'd had in the Bristol nightclub, and then pretending that the entire England team were thuggish and they had a problem with anger and violence and yobbery. And that became like a thing that even nice, sensible journalists that I work with would be saying, yeah, you've got to understand, Dan, the culture of English cricket is clearly way too much boozing and fighting. What are you talking about? You know, and so that was genuinely offensive and annoying. Whereas we've got Alistair Cook making a very innocent mistake, actually, when talking to this Turkish barber who said, yeah, the Australians had been in, and he said, oh, who was it? And this guy hadn't paid the bill, and he said, that was he? He's quite short. Says, oh, probably the wicket keeper. He said, yeah, he's a wicket keeper. And you know, it turned out it was the other wicket keeper. You know, who's the other wicket keeper? I've forgotten, Josh Inglis or whoever it is. I can't remember the spare wicket keeper. And so it was just a really innocent mistake, and it doesn't make you look evil, does it? You know, actually.
So someone did steal a haircut.
No, they didn't. They paid for it. They did pay for it. It's just that it was a cash-only hair cutter, so they had to go back and pay for it by a bank transfer, which they then did do. But obviously, it takes a little while for a bank transfer to go through. So
it temporarily stole a haircut.
Temporarily, well, he just got it on one day's credit or something.
Yeah,
you know?
we all
didn't pay interest though, did he?
Yeah, didn't pay interest.
Normally, take a haircut at the end. So everyone at some point in the haircutting process has stolen the haircut.
Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Jack. But what was interesting about it was that they were really upset by it, and they didn't just laugh it off and go, "Oh, what?" You know, just ignore it, ignore him. But instead, they took it to heart, and the fact they took it to heart is because their hearts are soft, and it's very sweet to have an Australian side whose hearts are soft, and they're generally a very nice bunch of lads. But it was fascinating that it was that, because that's not what it's like normally playing against Australian teams. And I thought England exploited that really, really well. And it meant that we could just make little snide, quippy remarks to all of their journalists about how your guys have gone a bit soft. And of course, they hate that, because the definition of the Ashes is not just morally pure, but physically perfect specimens of the human race, the Australians, marching into the land of the milk toast and the crafty underfed cur, who is the Englishman, who is a snivelling wretch. and does stuff behind your back and hasn't got the guts to say things to your face. And unfortunately, they got fronted up to and got taken down, and they didn't like that very much. So it was rather good fun.
We've got 2 questions to finish off, both from Alex, one from our Patreons, and you can sign up as a Patreon by going to the show notes, patreon.com/thecricketpod if you want to support the show directly. And we'll start with Patreon Alex, who asks, in retrospect, was Ollie Pope's injury one of the most important moments in the series, with the selection implications that followed on from that? Now, I know both
Asking
of
the
you are
wrong
big
guy there.
Ollie Pope fanboys, but it did mean that England could reorganise and bring in Wokes and that, keep Mo and Ali in the side, and they did win the Ashes 2-0 after Pope was ruled out. So arguably, England did win the Ashes if you take Pope out the equation.
Yeah, I don't know about that. You could get Wokes in anyway, couldn't you? Actually,
Okay.
I suppose it's because Stokes couldn't bowl, and there is an argument that if you're going to go in with a top 6 in which none of them are really bowlers, with the exception of Root and only really in the latter half of it. Oh, he played a part at Edgbaston, didn't he? But he didn't bowl like a 5th bowler. He bowled more like a 5th and a half bowler. You know what I mean? So I suppose there's an argument that somebody dropping out there made it possible to slightly alter the lineup. If you remember, Harry Brook went at 3 initially, which was a kind of weird one.
One innings. Yeah.
One innings, yeah.
I realised I read the wrong Alex question there, so I will go back to it because it is a good one to finish on. The one from Twitter from other Alex is, in a parallel world where Alex Carey and Todd Murphy got Australia over the line, did cricket just die? Did Test cricket just die? And I think we can all agree that yes.
No, we can't.
No longer play.
No, because actually, if Australia had won it 3-1, they would have had the euphoria, and then it would have been just really, really awful memory for English fans, and that would be something that was more dynamic than this sense of So I don't know, in a strange kind of way, it would have fueled
Would have been
fire,
better.
and it would have been much better for Australians, and they are also part of the cricket family. So I dare say.
Okay.
It depends on your perspective. It would have felt grotesquely unfair, wouldn't it? But then if you win by hunting down 384 to win, then perhaps you have actually sort of answered the question about which was the better team. Because then unequivocally would have been. But they didn't, because they weren't. And that's it. Although they didn't half whine about the ball, bloody hell! I wish you'd seen the press box and the broadcast boxes yesterday. Australians harumphing like nobody's business about that changed ball. It was hilarious. And also conveniently forgetting that James Pattinson did exactly the same thing at Edgbaston in 2019 when England were well on top. I think Burns and Butler were in the middle of a really dominating partnership that was going to give England a massive lead, and Pattinson got the ball changed and it hooped round bloody corners, which altered the result of that game. But obviously people don't remember things in the midst of furious rage. They're also right. It is incredible that they picked that ball. It's absolutely incredible. What the hell was going on?
There's nothing
Joel
new
Wilson
about...
was going on, wasn't he?
There's nothing new about ball changes hooping around corners, but that was really
But
the players
you
were
could read
pretty
the
sanguine
writing on
about
it. You could see the writing. You can actually see your face in it. Ooh, oh yeah. Stuart Broad was putting his headband on, looking at the reflection of himself in the bleeding thing. It's insane. But
we've got the last question from Alex on Patreon. What was Dan's favourite moment to commentate on in the series? And I think that's a good way to leave things. What memory of you on the microphone will stick with you, do you think?
Well, one of them was coming on straight after the incident, and I really enjoyed what was happening. I literally came on the ball, the very next ball, and the crowd had gone so mental, and I was at Lord's watching a mental crowd, and you never get to watch a mental crowd at Lord's because they're soporific and hate cricket mostly at Lord's. And so that was just magical, and being able to see what Stuart Broad was doing and commentating on him, exaggeratedly keeping his back behind the line and staring at the bowlers and then pointing a finger at Alex Carey and telling him, this is what you're going to be remembered for, and then whipping the crowd into an incredible frenzy. Because when you're on commentary, it's like, I could choose a wicket or a moment, and each one of those wickets and moments is just enormous fun, even when it's like an oh no moment because England have lost a wicket at a crucial stage. It's just there's great adrenaline in that. But actually, the 20-minute segment I did straight after the incident was spine-tinglingly wonderful, and theatrical and full of shithousery. And there's nothing you love more as a commentator than commentating on shithousery, because I quite enjoy it, and I'm supposed to be pompous and say it's all wrong, but I don't. I kind of love it. So yeah, that was my favourite. It was actually half an hour because it was on SEN. We did half an hour stints on that, so it was that half an hour I absolutely adored.
Boy, did they have the right man for the job when it came to the shithousery.
Oh yeah.
Right, there we go.
I was all over it.
That is the Ashes 2023 done, complete. We're going to move on to our daily coverage of the 100 now. That we shows Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday morning. No, I think we'll have a couple of days off, rest and recuperate, and plot our next move. Thank you very much for coming on, Daniel. Enjoy the rest of the summer.
Thank you very much. I'm going to the 100. I get the 100 on Wednesday for the London Spirit against the Oval Invincibles Till I Die. Well, Oval Invincibles Women Till I Die. I don't really bust with the men. They're not awfully good, and they don't captivate me in the same way. And I've got some. I don't think it's called the Royal London One Day Cup. I better make sure I get the new sponsor right. But I'm doing 4 of Surrey's games for that, for no other reason than that I really want to see. I wanted to see Sheridan Gums, who is the most brilliantly named player on the county circuit, but it looks like he's not going to be playing in the first game. Who knows? We'll see. Maybe they'll select him. Let's hope they do. But that's my August lined up, and then there's a bit of one-day cricket, and then the countdown for another 10 months of misery waiting for a home test match.
There's a World Cup.
There is a World Cup. Yeah, should be going to that. So that will be a laugh. There's a lot of schlepping around. You've got to show a lot of boarding passes if you're going to be in India travelling every 3 days. But I'll get used to that. I might just pin the boarding pass to me as I walk through. Just nail it.
You get like a revolving advertising board to just show the changing boarding passes on a.
Be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah. A filer.
I might make a little ruff out of them like that. Yeah. Have them all hanging down around my neck.
Great. Right, we're going to wrap up. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks very much for listening, and thanks for watching.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.